Airfix starter sets, what can you do with them just using the stuff that they supply in the box? Find out when I tackle the Airfix starter Mustang right here on Gary's Stuff. Hi there, I'm Gary. Welcome to my channel. Welcome back if you've been here before. Today, I've set myself a bit of a challenge of making the Airfix starter set of the P-51 Mustang fighter in 1/72nd scale, only using the things that Airfix supply in the box, plus the handful of household tools that Airfix suggests you should use on their tip sheet that comes with the kit. In the future, I'll be making this with a no-holds-barred approach with every tip and trick and paint and glue and everything else at my disposal. But today, it's just what you get in the box. If you enjoy the show and you'd like to support the channel, you can do that for free by making sure you've subscribed. Hit the bell and you'll be notified of all my future builds and other videos as they are published, including the no-holds-barred version of this. And of course, anything you see on the channel you like, please do make sure you give it the old imperial thumbs up on the like button below, because every like counts. And if you want to support the channel in a more concrete way, you can do that through any of my online affiliate programs, details of which are in the information box below. This includes the Airfix affiliate program. Okay, let's make a start on the starter set of the Mustang P-51D in 1/72nd scale from Airfix. Alright, so we're going to make a start. We're going to do a little bit of painting first. So we're going to paint the pilot. We're going to take the seat off and put it on the cockpit. Then we're going to paint the cockpit. And then we're going to paint the inside of the cockpit walls here and here. So to do that, we are going to need to get our paint. So, and you can see it doesn't look very mixed because it's not. This would have been sitting around on a shelf for a little while. So what we need to do first is get something like a cocktail stick, just a little bit of wood or something like that, or a little coffee stirrer, anything like, and give the paint a good stir until it all blends into the right color, or into a single color. Then you'll know it's the right color. And what we do is very gently just run the paint over the figure, like so. I'm going to suggest leaving the face clear because it's just a bit paler, and for this purpose it'll be fine. It'll just look a little. It'll be a brighter feature that will show up. Obviously, it's not the right color, but it'll be a brighter contrast to the rest of the kit. It's interesting that they've molded this with all these parachute markings, even the parachute pack, which you're not going to see. You're just never going to see that on the aircraft. So I don't know why they did that, but hey. I often don't know why model companies do what they do. That's a couple of things you need to do now is put on the oxygen mask. Just very, very gentle. Don't push it, don't worry too much about it. Just there you go, so just a little indication of an oxygen mask. And what you can do, if you've got a very, very thin, just get a tiny bit of paint and mix it up with some water, because this is water soluble paint. What you can do is just dab this very thin paint, black paint, over this model. And what it's going to do is going to collect in all the folds. Okay, later, when you're doing this a lot, you'll call this a detail wash or something like that. Pin wash, detail wash. But you can see it just gives it a little bit more texture. Now, when it dries, you'll lose that glossy wet look on there, but also it will dry a little bit paler than you first think. So you can go back and do it again, but don't keep doing it too much until you've let it dry solidly. And then you can have another go. You can actually also just dot over the face, just to highlight some of these features a little bit more in the face. So come back, revisit that when it's dried and have another go. And in the meantime, we'll build somewhere for our intrepid aviator to sit. Okay, next we're going to start taking some things off the frame. Now, what we're going to do, don't go too close to this edge when you're taking stuff off the frame. Okay, don't go right up against it. We'll worry about that later. First thing is just to get it off the frame. So snip a little bit off the edge like so. Okay. Now, when you're using snips or cutters of any kind, don't just go sort of snip. What you want to do, put the flat part on the plastic like so, and gently, just gently squeeze. Let the blades do the work. And that will come off. Most of it comes off in one go. In fact, well, if these were a little bit sharper or newer, they would come off in one go. Then the little bit that's left, you can apply your sanding stick, or in this case, your nail file to it. Get it nice and flat, okay? So it's the same on the other side with this blobby thing. We call this an ejector pin mark. Something to do with the moulding. So again, cap it and just gently snip through. Ideally, you shouldn't hear the jaws go click at the end. Well, they're going to very, very slightly, but you really shouldn't. More gently you apply pressure, the less noise you'll make at the end. If when you join these it goes snap, then you know you've gone way too fast. And just keep doing it. Now, I'm using these modeling nippers. These are very inexpensive, like $5 or something. You can use things like any kind of clippers, nail clippers, small cutters of any description, but you know these kind of modeling nippers are very, very inexpensive, especially online or in a decent model shop. Shouldn't be like more than like $5 for a basic pair. So once you've cut everything, this is the cockpit floor. This is the pilot seat, and it sits on like so. We always check fit everything because sometimes you may have forgotten to remove something. You know, a bit of extra plastic that you've maybe forgotten to take off, or haven't sanded down clean enough, or the parts just aren't really fitting together very well. Always dry fit things before we then commit to putting some glue down. But this all looks quite good, so we should be fine. Now, when it comes to glue, this stuff will go everywhere if you try and use it straight from the pack here. There's this tube. So what I think is, remember the cocktail stick we used to stir the paint with the other end, keep it nice and clean, and you just use that as an applicator. Okay, tiny bit of glue. You really don't need much glue on these things, and they will stick. The glue is a kind of welding, in fact, so it partially melts the glue, partially melts the plastic, and then as the vapor comes off the glue and it sets the joint solidly again. So it's very much like welding in that you sort of partially melt it, not with heat on this occasion, it's with chemistry. And then as it cools, or as it sets, when the volatiles come off, then it sets. Now we'll leave that alone for a while, because what we're going to do is paint all of this and then put the whole thing into the aircraft. Right, so we'll leave that for a while, put that to one side. Okay, so I've painted most of the cockpit area green. I just need to paint these two bits. These are radio boxes. I need to paint them black. And I'm going to run a bit of black along the top of this instrument panel here, control panel. In fact, I'll do that first. And then the radio boxes as well. And then again with a bit of the black diluted down, just a bit of a wash around all these parts here, just to highlight these edges. Again, don't worry about the density of the colour. It will fade a little bit when it dries, but just give it a bit of a wash all over, and it just makes it look sort of more used. And you know, these things weren't terribly clean. Well, they were when they started, obviously, but not by the time I'd done a few missions. These things were a bit mucky on the inside. Now, one thing on this model, in order that the this injection line here, filling up the mold with this plastic, they don't want the injection line to go into the edge of the model, because you have to then sand actually down the surface of the model. So what a lot of them do now is have what they call an undercut fill, which means it actually comes into this bit, which is the face that joins the two together. Unfortunately, that can be a bit more tricky to take off than the old style. So what I do is just very gently take this off. So for a tiny little stub there, take that off like so, and then just sand this bit down and you'll be fine. I'm going to paint in these little panels as well. I don't know whether they should be black or whether they should be staying green. Some of them probably should be staying green. Others are definitely black. I don't know. I'm going to just paint them all black there. Bits of radios and stuff like that. Little controls. Thing is, with the canopy on, you're really not going to see a lot of these things. But there we go. Now, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to go back to using our slightly diluted paint. And we're just going to put in a bit of shadow here. Now, you can see how these this panel arrangement here, these panels and the ribs, creates a bit of shadow. What we're going to do is really emphasize that again, because we're going through a bit of plastic. We're going to lose a lot of that definition, a lot of that light. So what we'll do is just like little L shapes up in the top corner underneath things, and paint in the shadows. Okay, so it's just using the black paint you've got, a little bit of water, and the brush you've got, and that will do it. That will do everything. And leave it to dry, and that just gives you a sort of a punchier visual shadow when you're looking down through glass into this area. And when the seat's dry, you can pop your pilot in place like so. Right, now it's time to put the fuselage together. So we're going to put the cockpit section in first. Remember, we're just going to dab some glue along here. Don't go crazy with the glue. It's not so much of an issue here, but it's good practice to get into for not putting too much glue on everything, because it will go everywhere. It really will. So the instructions are very good for telling you which bits need glue on them. They're shown in yellow typically. Well, they say to put it on the fuselage itself, but I prefer to do it this way around. Right, so this one piece goes all the way back to the tail wheel bay here. You can see the raised parts of the model there that this all holds against to position this in the best place possible. Now, before that dries, and it's important to do it before this dries because otherwise things could get a bit difficult later on, we are now going to glue the other half of the cockpit on to this. So again, we'll just run some glue along here. Now, with the cockpit, it's a good idea to run the glue, if you can, along this inside edge. The reason is when the two squeeze together, the glue's, if you put the glue on the inside edge here more than the outside edge, the glue is more likely to squeeze inwards rather than outwards. If it screws outwards, you have to clean it up later on. Okay, these holes here are where pin alignment pins come, so you can put a little dab of glue onto those. And again, just go work your way around, just putting dabs of glue along. And really do watch your fingers when you're doing this, because your fingers will pick up some glue if you're not careful, and then you'll spread it to other parts of the model, and then that's going to be quite disastrous. Now, at the end here, the instructions say put glue all over this. What I'm going to say to you is, yes, that's a good idea. However, really spread it thin. Don't just slather a load of glue over this, because again, when this comes together, you don't want the glue squirting out of the joints all over your fingers and all over your model. Then, when you've done that, you can just place the other half of the cockpit or fuselage on top. And it should, in theory, all go together, like so. There is supposed to be a gap here. That's where, if you have a kit later on, when a canopy slides, there's a slot for the canopy to slide back along, a guide rail, but obviously on this kit, the canopy doesn't slide anywhere. So just pinch it all together, make sure it's all nicely in contact. And then what we're going to do is tape up. Now you can use clothes pegs, as long as they're not too powerful. You can use small clamps, and you can use bits of tape, masking tape or something like that. Just something quite gentle. Don't use sellotape, because that will leave or any adhesive tape like that, because they will leave residues on here. But something like a masking tape, especially one designed for sort of delicate surfaces, will be perfect. And you can use, as I say, some clamps to hold everything in place while the glue goes off. On now to the wings. Now I've cut the wings from the frame. You might think, oh, that's it, the plastic's used, I'll throw it away. Don't, because this is part of your stand. It looks very much like the rest of the frame, but this is part of your stand, so you want to keep this bit if you're going to put it up on a stand as if it were flying. Another thing to be aware of, you remember those undercut pieces for filling? There's one that goes in the wing here, which means that the front of the wing doesn't get affected, which is grand. But when you've cut this sort of nub of the plastic off here, it still sticks up a bit, and it is actually a little tricky to get your sander in. So just be very careful with that. It's kind of like, well, yeah, you don't want to do a front gate into the front here, because you don't want to destroy the front edge, leading edge of the wing. But then this just makes it a little bit trickier to get everything right to stick together. But it will go, just be very careful. And again, when you're sanding the bottom half wing, there is a connector point there, a gate here. Don't do it like this, because you can see there's an angle for where the flaps and ailerons go. It's slightly angled, so don't do it. Make sure you come at it sort of from the side like this. Don't be tempted to just get the whole thing flat, because you won't do any good that way. And before you join the wings together, you might want to just paint the interior of the wheel well our olive green colour. Again, the glue needs to go on these faces, but you can just spread it out. Don't leave big blobs of it. It will all stick together. I'm using the lower surface of the wing here. I'm putting it on because the upper surface kind of sort of fits over it and around it in a way. Again, try and keep the glue away from the edges as much as you can. Then we can put the top half of the wing onto the bottom half. Like so. And again, use tape or clips to hold everything in place while it dries, while it sets. And when it's all dry, a bit of glue around the edge there, and then the wing's gone. Now the wings kind of slot in here underneath this huge intake. Push it all the way back, and then it should just, there we go, a little bit further, a little bit further, and then it goes into place there like this. Now it may take, if it's not going in straight away, it will take a bit of pushing until it will click into place. Don't get, there we go. Just clicks down into place like that. Okay. And we can put the tail planes on. As you can see, they've been nicely marked right and left. So they only go on one way. Now, before I put the canopy on, you'll notice I've just painted all the edges here and this little inset here in black, like anti-glare black. That's the black that comes with the kit. And then we've got to cut the transparency out. Now these, I should say, are very brittle, so we're going to cut it a long way from the edge first. As I say, plastic part, these clear plastic parts are incredibly brittle, and they do craze when you cut them if you're not careful. So what I'm going to do is cut it a distance, a little distance from the part, like so. You can hear that it makes that snap sound that you want to avoid. Well, there's not much you can do about that, I'm afraid. And then very gently just trim that edge off, and it should just be clear, sort of that white look just where you've taken the nib off. Hopefully it won't go into any other part of the transparency. So again, cut it a little way away first, and then really slowly, gently cut the nib away. Now when I'm doing this, I'm finding that if you use the inside part of the jaws here, you get a lot more control than you do on the outside part of the jaws on this sort of cut. So really, really gently. And it pops out like so. You are going to have to go along the line, so very gently. Because it kind of breaks it rather than cuts through it, and that's not great if you're trying to avoid marks. That's okay, that's all right. What we do is we've got that little bit at the front, we can tuck in underneath this front end here. Can you see? That little tongue bit there, it goes underneath the front of there. And then it clicks into place like that. Now, on a lot of kits, like the Spitfire, that's all you need to do. It will lock in place. And actually this feels locks in place. If you're worried, you can put a tiny, and I mean a tiny, dot of glue on that join. But really, as little glue as will hold it, because when this glue goes off, it releases a lot of vapors, and the vapors can cause frosting on this canopy piece. It makes it look all cloudy. So really try and avoid glue. That's why they've designed the canopy this way, is to avoid that frosting effect. I think that looks actually pretty cool. As it is, I'm going to leave it alone. So now we're going to start painting our model as it is for the moment, because we want to paint it first, and then we're going to put other bits on, like the propellers and the wheels. We're going to put those on later on. But I really want to paint the body of this first. Now, I've got this Humbrol number 33 silver. I will admit to you right now, this is not my favourite paint in the world, 33 silver. But it's what comes with the kit, so we'll do what we can do. As you can see, these paints are very thick. Okay. The best rule when we're brush painting anything is to do several coats of thin paint rather than slap it on in one thick layer. Okay, you want to do a few coats of thin paint rather than one massively thick coat of one paint, because it'll look horrible. I promise you. I know, because I've done it. So what we're going to do, I'm going to water this down a bit. Now I've got here, this is just like a little foil cake tin, whatever you call it. Okay, anything that you can use. You can use a dish, a little saucer, little cup, plastic cup, whatever you like. Doesn't matter. All we're going to do is use this to water down the paint. Okay, so we need a container to water the paint in. That's all this is. It's just a container. Nothing special, nothing grand. Okay, no magic here. We're just trying to water down the paint. Right, and to this, we're just going to mix a few drops of water. Again, there's nothing special about anything I'm using here. It's just water, tap water. I happen to have a little container that tap water goes into, I use for various things. It's not important what you use. Just a bit of, prepare, throw away anything you like. Doesn't matter. Now, that's half and half. You notice it's got very, very thin. Well, that's not going to do anything. So now we can keep adding paint to it. What we're aiming at is something that's a bit like milk, a little bit like sort of thickish milk. Don't want to go for the whole double cream or single cream effect. Just want to go for something that's got a bit of consistency of milk to it. Okay, we're going to need quite a bit, I think. I think I've overdone the water, to be honest with you. Okay, it's beginning to come to. You do need to mix this really well. I will tell you, really well. Now, again, because we are going to put several coats of this on, you're not going to notice a big difference straight away. You're going to think, oh my God, this looks awful. It's all going to clump up. It's all going to... This first coat is essentially going to be like a primer coat. Okay. Now, if you've got some spray primer, like some plastic primer, do give it a spray of this first, but make sure this is cut. Put pit tape over your canopy. Otherwise, your canopy is going to get all covered, and that's not good, is it? So, just for this very first, very wet coat, this is like a primer. Just paint this on. Okay, it will stick. It will gradually break through the surface resistance here, and it will start coating. And you're going to leave this on, and you're going to let it dry. Okay, it doesn't look like anything's happened, I know, but really, we'll come back to this in a little bit. It will have dried up, and you will have a base coat on. Okay, it's quite thin. I know it's quite thin, but go for it. Another little tip is this kit comes with a shadow stand, so let's put the stand together. And what you can do is use this to hold the plane. When you finish painting things, you can use it to hold it in place up off the ground so it don't get dirty and it doesn't get smudged. So now the painting's almost done. Just going to put one last coat. You can see each coat really doesn't add a lot, but they do add up. This is the fourth coat I've put on, I think now. Yeah, fourth coat. Now I'm using paint which is thicker than when I started out. So now I'm using like probably 1 part water to say 4 parts paint. Whereas earlier on it was 1 part water to maybe 2 parts paint. And just work over the model. Clean out where it accumulates in these panel lines. Just give it a very light brush out. The other thing to remember is when you're painting is this one, the last coat, always brush with the flow of where the air flows because it looks a bit more natural. But on other layers, do alternate the way you brush across the whole thing, because that the way you won't get like any lasting brush marks. Each coat brushing is sort of a different main direction, but the last one do in the direction of the wind flow. I think we're pretty much closely to being done now. I think this is as good as we're going to get. I think as good as we're going to get from this brush and these paints on this kit. I think we're going to do much more than this. Okay, we're going to start also now assembling the propeller. Now, I'm not going to put it on just yet, but it's good sometimes while things are drying, like paint drying or whatever, you can get on with some other tasks that take time, like assembling other bits. The propeller, the undercarriage we'll look at soon. The next lot of glue goes on the back of this part, which we call the spinner. With dabs of glue in, right, and then this part of the spinner sits on the back. That's the whole of the front of the propeller system done. And this piece is going to go on the back here, and there's a propeller shaft here. Now, if you want this to actually spin, the propeller to actually spin, I would put a touch of glue in there first, and then when you've assembled this, because this piece goes in the back here, like so, pushes in all the way back. If you don't put glue on that, but then put glue into here, just enough to grip the propeller shaft, then the propeller will turn when you go on the model. I personally don't particularly worry about that, so anyway, that's not what I do. So anyway, I'm just going to put glue on here, then the whole thing can go on and I'm happy. I'm not worried about it spinning or not. Get that so, and let that whole collection there settle down and set up and set the glue set go off. Next thing I'm going to do is paint on the on top here. It's got like an olive green anti-glare thing. Okay, that same green that's on the inside of the plane. Now the line you want to go from is like the bottom of this canopy piece here, roughly to the top of this. See this tiny little square panel here. The line you want is roughly like that. Okay, so what I'm going to do is, remember I said that you can tape the thing up, use tape on the plane. What I'm going to do is use a bit of this tape. Now remember, this is masking tape, this is what this was intended to do, just to get that line as straight as I can. Like so. Okay. Now, the really, really important thing here is, if you want to do this, make sure this paint here has properly dried, like at least overnight before you do this, because otherwise, if it hasn't set in, you will pull the paint off. Okay, so just do it very gently and put it in place, then we can paint these lines on. Once we've got the tape on, we can then paint across. Now, the thing here is, don't paint along this line, don't paint into the line, paint away from the line. That way you won't force paint under the edge if it's not quite entirely flat. Okay, and just work your way along nicely into this edge like that, and just Keep doing this. This is what you do for the edge, obviously for the main part. When you've done that, just keep away from the edge, but just sort of even it out a little bit. You are going to, you're going to probably put 2 coats of this on, so don't worry about getting it right first time, as it were. You probably will need 2 coats of this to cover either the plastic or the silver that you've already put down. But just keep at it. Then when you're ready, you can gently, and I mean gently, pull the tape away to reveal actually a pretty straight line. We're going to paint the frame of the windows now. You're going to have to do it by hand. Clean brush, wet it so it forms a point, then just a little bit of paint on it. The important thing here is I'm going to do black first because A, it looks good from the other side because it's transparent so you can see the inside of the window. And also if you're doing something like silver, it's much better to paint silver onto black because it'll stand out, whereas painting silver directly onto the glass will be very tricky. The other thing is to always paint along the line. Now, it sounds stupid, but brushes work when you use them in one direction. Okay, like that. Don't try and sort of paint along like this because it will smear. Paint along the line you're painting. Painting down this way is more difficult also because when you get to the bottom you're going to be sort of quite vertical on it. It's going to spray out. So do it this way along and it'll nice straight line. Then when the black's dry you can go over with other colours. In this case I'm going over with that olive green. And the thing is the black will almost give it a natural outline. So you can paint just down the middle of the black. And the edges of the black that's still visible will give it like an extra bit of depth, a little extra bit of sort of visual sharpness. It'll look much, much better. You can see how when you look through it, you can see the black on the other side. It looks pretty cool. Okay, we're going to do the undercarriage now. You can see there's like a C shape in the middle of the hub bit here. It's like a C. Because it's not completely round, that's because the hole it goes into, it's not completely round either. You can see like a corresponding C shape or D shape really in the hub. That means it helps position the wheel exactly where it should be on the hub because it's got a slightly flat spot, which you'll see later, which is due to the weight of the aircraft, and it's supposed to represent that weight of the aircraft. So the C shape fits very properly into the D shape, okay, like so. So on the doors here you can see there's a pin which goes into that hole at the top there, and then there's this block just above this sort of knee shaped thing, and there's a cutout in the door there for that, so you can see how these go together. So tiny dab of glue, put them together, job's done. When the undercarriage legs are dry, you can put them into the plane. So again, make sure you use the numbers of the kit really carefully to make sure you put the right leg in the right side. It's got to face slightly forward and like so, and straight. So you can see also when the leg is closed, it fits with the triangle, if you like, pointing backwards. So it goes in this way. But also, the tail wheel can go in, kind of like a slot at the front. There we go. You can feel it goes into. Okay. Like so. And let these dry. Another use for the paint pots is keeping the wings level while the wheels dry. An optional extra are the fuel tanks that go on the wing. You can put these on earlier if you want, and then paint them silver when you do the whole aircraft, or paint them silver separately when you get them on. It's up to you. But they are rather tricky to locate on the pins, I have to say. Something else that needs to go in are the exhausts. Again, they're marked right here and left here, but they also, you notice that left, the tab is at the back here. Was for the right hand one, the tab's in the middle. So even if you can't see those the left and right for some reason, these will only go one way round. Okay, put some glue into the slots here. It's the right hand slot. You can see there's a hole there, and there's a slot tab, and it goes in. And finally, for this build, for the moment at least, I can put the propeller on the front, like so. And we're pretty much done. The only thing we need to do now are the decals, the markings, what we used to call transfers, and we'll do those next. Now, for the water slide decals, what you need to do is soak them in warmish water for about 20 or 30 seconds. Pick them out. I tend to use a dish with warm water in it and just lay them in there. Then just wet the surface where you're going with a paintbrush, again, just with some water. Then use the instruction sheet to tell you where the decals should go. There we go. It's about there, but what we do is we check with the instructions. The instructions tell us exactly where, and you can use the panel lines as a guide. That's quite handy. So we want to be exactly halfway between these panel lines and kind of straightened out, and that's pretty much where we are actually. How about that? Lucky first shot there. A little bit straighter. There we go, like that. Now, what we need to do now is just a bit of tissue paper, toilet tissue, kitchen towel, whatever. Just dab it into place, and also at the same time start dabbing some of the excess water off and leave that to settle down. Once that's started to settle down, you can do is get, if you've got a cotton bud or something like that, is just very gently sort of roll it across the top just to help set it down. But really, you don't have to do this. This is just something. If you happen to have them in the house, you can do that. And then just go around the plane and do all the rest of them. So there we have the P-51D Mustang in 1/72nd scale from Airfix, one of the new starter sets for 2024. I think it's a nice kit. I really enjoyed making it. The challenge primarily, I guess, was painting this metal all over handle number 11 with the one paintbrush, the one number 2 paintbrush. It's not really wide enough to do a good job on such a large area of paint, but it's okay. If you take your time and do several coats of slightly watered down paint, you can get something that looks half reasonable, I suppose. The decals, there's few of them, but where you do use them, it really pumps up the sharpness of the model really nicely. It all goes together very, very straightforwardly. I don't really think there's anything that caused any major problems. I'd love another paint. I mean, I'd rather than the gunmetal, for example, that's only used on the exhaust pipes. You could make that from the silver and the black in the kit. You could mix the two together and get something actually probably better than the gunmetal that's supplied, which would give you the option for another paint color to go in. Maybe something a little bit lighter that you could actually use for the pilot to give some detail to the pilot. Some the fact that their face is there. You can't see where the pilot is half the time. Other than that, it goes together nicely. It fits nicely. It's a lovely little kit. I really enjoyed making it. I will, enjoyed trying to make it with a bit more, hopefully, I was going to say skill and talent, but a few more sort of fancy toys really, and see whether we can really pimp it up, which will be in the next video. There it is. You know, I don't think it's all that bad, but I know I can do an awful lot better with all the stuff I have at my disposal. That will be a separate video coming out fairly shortly. If you want to know when that's around, best thing to do is make sure you subscribe to the channel and hit that bell. Then you'll get a notification whenever I publish anything. And of course, anything you see on my channel that you like, please do give it the old imperial thumbs up on the like button below, because every like counts. Thank you so very much for watching today. Hope to see you again very soon on the channel. Take good care now, and goodbye.